Stop. You haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Subscribe now. We have new stories every day. Now, let's go. Alan West wiped the grease from his hands with a rag that had seen better days. The afternoon sun slanted through the high windows of his auto shop, catching dust motes in golden beams. The rhythmic tapping of metal on metal echoed as his employees worked on their respective projects. Pride swelled in his chest as he surveyed what he built after leaving the Marines. West Custom Autos, the most respected shop in Rosewood for those who wanted quality work. His cell phone vibrated against the workbench. Alan glanced at the screen, recognizing the number of Sarah's school. His 6-year-old daughter was the center of his universe, the only good thing that had come from his disaster of a marriage to Amber. West, he answered, pressing the phone between his ear and shoulder as he continued organizing his tools. Mr. West, this is Mrs. Klein from Riverview Elementary. You need to come pick up Sarah immediately. The tension in her voice made Alan freeze. What happened? There's been an incident. Sarah is in the nurse's office. She's asking for you. Alan's heart hammered against his ribs. I'm on my way. He grabbed his keys without bothering to change out of his work clothes. Carlos, you're in charge. He barked to his lead mechanic before sprinting to his truck. The drive to Riverview Elementary took 12 minutes. Alan made it in 7, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. His mind raced with possibilities, each worse than the last. He'd faced insurgents in Horuja with less fear than what gripped him now. The school secretary recognized him instantly and pointed down the hallway. Nurse's office, straight ahead. Alan pushed open the door to find Sarah sitting on a plastic chair, her small shoulders hunched. The school nurse stood nearby, her expression tight with concern. Daddy, Sarah cried when she saw him. Alan dropped to his knees before her, his eyes immediately drawn to the blood-matted hair on the right side of her head. A poorly cleaned wound, about an inch long, peeked through her blonde hair. What happened, baby? He asked, fighting to keep his voice steady. Sarah's lower lip trembled. Tears pooled in her blue eyes that were carbon copies of his own. I fell, she whispered. The nurse exchanged a glance with him that said she didn't believe that explanation any more than he did. Sarah, sweetie, Alan said gently, taking her tiny hands in his calloused ones. You can tell me the truth. No matter what, I'll protect you. Always. Sarah's eyes darted to the nurse, then back to her father. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper no one else could hear. Mom's boyfriend hurt me. Something dark and primal awoke inside Alan. His vision tunneled briefly as rage threatened to overtake him. Did you hear what she said? The nurse asked. Alan nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He scooped Sarah into his arms, careful of her injury. I'm taking her to the hospital. Mr. West, we've already called Family Protective Services. They'll want tow. They can find us at Rosewood Memorial. He cut her off. Come on, baby. Let's get you checked out. At the hospital, a doctor with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor examined Sarah while Alan stood nearby, refusing to leave his daughter's side. The wound required 3 stitches, the doctor explained afterward. There's bruising consistent with a forceful impact. This was no fall, Mr. West. She lowered her voice. This was no accident. Alan nodded grimly. I know. When Sarah fell asleep, sedated by pain medication, Alan stepped into the hallway and called Amber. Each ring fueled his anger until her voice, artificially sweet, answered. What do you want, Alan? I'm busy. Sarah's in the hospital, he said flatly. She needed stitches. A pause. What did you do? The accusation hit him like a physical strike. What did I? Amber, she told me Adrian hurt her. Oh, for God's sake. Amber's voice dripped with disdain. She probably fell. You know how clumsy she is. You're overreacting. Stop making a fuss. Alan pressed his palm against the wall to steady himself. Our daughter is lying in a hospital bed with a head wound. And you think I'm overreacting? Kids get hurt all the time. Adrian would never. If you or that piece of garbage come near her again, Alan said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, you will regret it. Are you threatening me? Amber demanded. I'm making you a promise. Alan ended the call and slipped the phone into his pocket. He stood in the sterile hallway, breathing deeply, calling on the discipline he'd learned in the Marines to control the furious storm coursing through him. Amber had always been selfish, but this crossed a line he hadn't thought even she would cross. And Adrian, the thought of that man's hands on his daughter, made Alan's vision blur with fury. A nurse approached cautiously. Sir, the social worker and a police officer are here to speak with you. Alan nodded and followed her back to Sarah's room, already knowing the system would fail his daughter. But he wouldn't. Never again would anyone hurt her. He would make sure of it. The social worker was a tired-looking woman in her 50s with a weathered notebook and eyes that had seen too much. The police officer was younger, early 30s, maybe, with the alert posture of someone who took his job seriously. Mr. West, I'm Detective Owen Gray. The officer introduced himself. This is Ms. Price from Family Protective Services. We need to talk about what happened to your daughter. Alan stood with his arms crossed. My daughter's ex-wife's boyfriend hit her. That's a serious accusation, Gray said. We'll need to interview Sarah. She's 6, Alan growled. She's sedated. We understand this is difficult, the social worker interjected, but we need to follow protocol. Alan reluctantly agreed to a brief interview once Sarah woke up. He sat beside her bed, holding her hand as she nervously answered their questions. Can you tell us what happened to your head, Sarah? Ms. Price asked gently. Sarah glanced at Alan, who nodded encouragingly. I spilled juice on Adrian's computer, she whispered. He got really mad and pushed me. I hit the corner of the table. Did your mom see this happen? Detective Gray asked. Sarah nodded. She told Adrian to be more careful because someone might see. Alan's jaw clenched so hard his teeth might crack. Not because someone was worried about Sarah's pain, but because someone might see. That was Amber's concern. And then what happened? Ms. Price prompted. Mom put a bandage on it and told me not to tell Daddy. Sarah's voice quivered. But it kept bleeding at school, and it hurt real bad. After they finished questioning Sarah, Alan stepped out into the hallway with Gray and Price. I want that man arrested, he demanded. Price looked sympathetic but shook her head. We'll open an investigation, but without corroborating evidence. My daughter's statement isn't evidence. It is, Gray said, but it may not be enough for an arrest warrant. We need to interview the mother and her boyfriend. And in the meantime? Alan asked. Sarah will remain in your custody, Price assured him. We'll file an emergency restraining order against Mr. Harlow to keep him away from her. A piece of paper, Alan said flatly. That's your solution. Before either could respond, the elevator doors opened, and Amber strode out, followed closely by Adrian Harlow. Alan's body tensed, combat instincts kicking in at the sight of the man who'd hurt his daughter. Adrian was taller than Alan by a few inches, with the soft look of someone who'd never faced real hardship. Designer clothes and an expensive watch, all show, no substance. The kind of man Alan had always despised. Where's my daughter? Amber demanded, ignoring Alan entirely. I want to see her. Mrs. West, Detective Gray intercepted her. I'm Detective Gray. We have some questions about an incident involving your daughter. Amber's eyes narrowed. Alan's making a mountain out of a molehill, as usual. Sarah fell. Kids fall all the time. That's not what Sarah says happened, Gray replied. She's confused, Adrian interjected smoothly. I was there. She tripped over her own feet and hit the coffee table. It was an accident. Alan stepped forward, every muscle in his body coiled to strike. You stay away from my daughter. Adrian smirked, confidence oozing from him like cheap cologne. Your daughter? Funny. She lives under my roof more than half the time. Not anymore, Alan growled. Ellen, stop being dramatic, Amber snapped. This is exactly why I left you. Everything's always a crisis. Always black and white with you. Mr. West. Gray stepped between them. Let's not escalate the situation. I want to see my daughter, Amber repeated. That's not happening right now, the social worker said firmly. We're implementing an emergency protective order until we complete our investigation. This is ridiculous, Amber sputtered. You can't keep me from my child. Actually, they can, Ellen said with grim satisfaction. Amber turned her anger on him. You put her up to this, didn't you? You've always tried to turn her against me. Against you. Ellen couldn't believe what he was hearing. You let this man hurt her, and you're worried about yourself. I never touched the kid, Adrian said, his casual tone making Ellen's fists clench. Miss Price will arrange supervised visitation if appropriate, Gray told Amber. For now, I suggest you both go home. This isn't over, Amber hissed at Ellen before spinning on her heel. Adrian lingered a moment longer, his eyes meeting Ellen's with a smug look that said he knew he'd get away with it. Then he followed Amber to the elevator. Detective Gray turned to Ellen. I know you're angry, but don't do anything you'll regret. Will you arrest him? Gray's hesitation told Ellen everything he needed to know. We'll investigate thoroughly, the detective promised. But without physical evidence or witnesses besides Sarah. There's not enough evidence. Ellen finished for him. We'll keep an eye on him, Gray assured him. If he has a history, we'll find it. Ellen watched them walk away, knowing with absolute certainty that the system would not protect his daughter. The realization settled over him like a mantle, heavy, but clarifying. The law wouldn't protect Sarah, but he would, whatever it took. 2 days later, Sarah was home from the hospital, curled up on Ellen's couch watching cartoons. The stitches in her scalp stood stark against her pale skin, a constant reminder of what Ellen had failed to prevent. He'd taken time off work to stay with her, unwilling to let her out of his sight. While she napped in the afternoon, Ellen made a call. James Winston. James, it's Ellen. West. Been too long, brother. James's voice brightened. How's civilian life treating you? Not good. Ellen kept his voice low, glancing at Sarah's sleeping form. I need your help. The jovial tone disappeared from James's voice. What happened? Ellen explained the situation concisely, the way he would have delivered a field report back in the Marine days. Jesus Christ, James muttered when Ellen finished. What do you need? Information on Adrian Harlow. Everything you can find. I need leverage. You got it. Meet me tonight. Usual place. 2100 hours. I can't leave Sarah. Bring her. She can crash in the back room. My sister will wash her. Thanks, James. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when that piece of trash gets what's coming to him. That evening after dinner, Ellen drove to a small bar on the outskirts of Rosewood. The Red Hawk wasn't much to look at from the outside, but it was James's territory, a place where they could talk without worry. At the door, James's sister, Holly, greeted them with a warm smile for Sarah. Hey there, sweetheart. How about ice cream and movies in the back? Sound good? Sarah nodded shyly, taking Holly's outstretched hand after a reassuring nod from her father. I'll be right out here if you need me. Ellen promised. Once Sarah was settled, Ellen joined James at a corner booth. His friend hadn't changed much since their days in the Corps, still built like a tank, with vigilant eyes that missed nothing. The only difference was the scar that now ran from his left eyebrow to his jawline, a souvenir from their last deployment. How's she holding up? James asked, nodding toward the back room. She's tough, Ellen said, with pride tinged with sadness. Tougher than she should have to be. James slid a manila folder across the table. I called in some favors. Our boy Adrian isn't as clean as he pretends to be. Ellen opened the folder and scanned the contents. Police reports, financial records, news clippings. How did you get all this? I know people who know people, James said with a shrug. More importantly, I found someone you need to talk to. He tapped a photograph of a woman who resembled Adrian. Mia Harlow, Adrian's sister. They're estranged, but she knows things. Things that never made it into official reports. Where do I find her? She works at Rosewood General, nurse in the ER. James leaned forward. There's more. Adrian nearly killed a woman in Arizona 5 years ago. Domestic violence charges were filed, then mysteriously dropped. The woman moved out of state shortly after. Alan's eyes hardened as he continued reading. He has gambling debts. Big ones. To a guy you don't want to owe money to, Ramon Santiago. Runs an underground poker game and makes side money as a loan shark. Word is, Adrian is into him for at least 50 grand. That's useful, Alan murmured, his mind already formulating plans. James studied his friend's face. What are you thinking, West? I'm thinking Adrian Harlow has enemies, Alan replied. And I'm thinking I should introduce myself to them. The legal system won't do a damn thing. Alan cut him off. You know that as well as I do. James didn't argue. They'd both seen enough injustice to know better. Whatever you need, I'm in, James said simply. I need to talk to Mia Harlow first, Alan decided. Then we'll see. The next morning, after dropping Sarah off at school with strict instructions to the principal about who was allowed to pick her up, Alan drove to Rosewood General Hospital. He found Mia Harlow coming off her shift, a tired-looking woman with the same dark hair as her brother, but none of his smug arrogance. Ms. Harlow, he called out as she headed for the parking garage. Can I talk to you? She turned, weariness evident in her posture. Do I know you? No. My name is Alan West. It's about your brother, Adrian. Her expression hardened. I have nothing to say about him. He hurt my daughter, Alan said bluntly. She's 6 years old. Mia stopped, something shifting in her eyes. After a long moment, she said, There's a coffee shop across the street. I have 15 minutes. They sat at a corner table, Mia wrapping her hands around a cup of black coffee like she needed the warmth. What did he do to your daughter? She asked quietly. Alan explained the incident, watching Mia's face grow darker with each detail. Are you surprised? He asked when he finished. No, she admitted. Adrian has always been violent. Even as a kid, he hurt animals, smaller children. My parents made excuses, covered it up. They couldn't admit their precious son was a monster. I need to know everything about him, Alan said. Anything I can use. Mia studied him. To do what? To protect my daughter. She seemed to make a decision. There was a woman in Arizona, Jane Willis. He put her in a hospital. Broken ribs, fractured skull, internal bleeding. She nearly died. The charges were dropped, because my father paid her off, Mia said bitterly, and threatened her. That's what our family does, buys their way out of consequences. Your father's not in the picture anymore. Dead. 2 years ago. Heart attack. Left everything to Adrian, of course, but Adrian blew through most of it already. Gambling, mostly. She hesitated. There's something else you should know. When Adrian gets cornered, really cornered, he gets erratic. Dangerous. He nearly killed Jane when she threatened to leave him. Ellen absorbed this, filing it away. Does he have any weaknesses? Things he values? Himself, Mia said without hesitation. His reputation, his comfort, his freedom. Threaten any of those, and he'll crumble. But he'll lash out first. Ellen nodded. Thank you for your time. As he started to rise, Mia caught his wrist. What are you going to do? Ellen met her gaze steadily. Whatever it takes. Be careful, she warned. Adrian always finds a way to make others pay for his mistakes. Not this time, Alan promised. Back in his truck, Alan reviewed what he'd learned. Adrian Harlow was a predator who'd escaped consequences his entire life, thanks to family money and connections. He had a gambling problem, a violent temper, and a history of domestic abuse. He was currently in debt to a dangerous loan shark. Alan pulled out his phone and called James. "I need a meeting with Ramon Santiago," he said without preamble. "That's not a good idea," James cautioned. "I'm not asking for ideas. I'm asking for a meeting." James sighed. "I'll see what I can do." Alan started the engine, a plan forming in his mind. Adrian thought he was untouchable. Amber thought she could choose money over morals without consequences. They were both about to learn how wrong they were. Alan smiled grimly. Time to corner the monster. Alan watched Sarah sleep, her small chest rising and falling beneath her favorite unicorn pajamas. The stitches in her scalp had been removed, leaving an angry red line that would eventually fade to a scar. Physical wounds healed. The other kind. The kind that haunted your dreams and changed who you were. Those were the ones Alan worried about. In the week since Sarah had come home with that wound, Alan had been busy. Information gathering, surveillance, planning. Amber had called twice, demanding visitation rights. Both times, Alan had referred her to the social worker assigned to their case. The temporary protective order was still in place, but Alan knew it was just that, temporary. He quietly closed Sarah's door and went to his office, where papers and photos covered the desk. Adrian Harlow's life laid bare. Thanks to James and his connections, Alan now knew Adrian's daily routine, his favorite restaurants, his weekly poker game, even the name of his dry cleaner. More importantly, he knew Adrian's weaknesses: pride, public image, financial stability, freedom. All things Alan could take away. His phone buzzed with a text from James. Meeting set with Santiago. Tomorrow, 10 p.m. Address to follow. Alan sent back a thumbs-up emoji and turned to his computer. The dossier James had compiled on Ramon Santiago painted a clear picture. A calculated businessman who dealt in gambling, loans, and occasionally drugs. Not a man to cross, but not erratic either. Santiago operated by rules. His rules, but rules nonetheless. The next piece of Alan's plan required something else. He opened a new browser window and pulled up Amber's social media profiles. His ex-wife had always been obsessed with appearances, posting carefully curated glimpses of her perfect life. Her account was public. Amber had always craved an audience. Her recent posts showed a woman desperate to maintain the illusion of happiness. Photos with Adrian at expensive restaurants, a new designer bag, weekend trips to Clearwater. Comments like "living my best life" and "so blessed." But Alan knew Amber well enough to see through the facade. The smile that didn't reach her eyes, the increasing frequency of posts, as if trying to convince herself as much as others. He spent an hour creating a new email account, then composed a message. Amber, thought you should see where your boyfriend really is. Does he tell you where the money for those nice dinners comes from, or where it goes? A concerned friend, he attached documents showing Adrian's gambling debts and a police report from Arizona, carefully removing any information that could trace back to him. He sent it from a public library computer the next day, ensuring the IP address couldn't be linked to him. That evening, after arranging for a trusted neighbor to watch Sarah, Alan drove to meet Ramon Santiago. The address led to a nondescript office building on the edge of Rosewood. A man with shoulders like boulders met him at the door, patted him down for weapons, and led him to an elevator. The office on the top floor was modern and minimalist. Ramon Santiago sat behind a glass desk, a slim man in his 50s with silver hair and the relaxed posture of someone used to being in control. James stood to one side, face impassive. "Mr. West," Santiago greeted him. "James says you have information that might interest me." Ellen took the seat across from Santiago. "I understand Adrian Harlow owes you money." "That would be a private matter between myself and Mr. Harlow." "He won't pay you back," Alan said bluntly. "He's running a con on my ex-wife, burning through her money while hiding his debts. Once she's drained, he'll move on to his next victim." Santiago's expression didn't change. Why would this concern me? Because I can tell you where to find him when he thinks he's safe. I can tell you when he has cash on hand, and I can make sure no one connects you to whatever happens next. And why would you do this? He hurt my daughter, Alan said, the simple truth more powerful than any elaborate explanation. Understanding flickered in Santiago's eyes. A man's child is sacred. Yes. Santiago studied him for a long moment. What do you want in return? Nothing. Just the knowledge that he's looking over his shoulder, waiting for you to collect. You understand what might happen when I do. It wasn't a question, but Alan answered anyway. I understand exactly what might happen. Santiago nodded slowly. Very well. James knows how to contact me securely. Send the information through him. He stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Mr. West, I appreciate a man who protects what's his. But remember, once set in motion, some things cannot be stopped. I'm counting on it, Alan replied. Outside, James walked him to his truck. You sure about this, brother? Santiago doesn't mess around. I'm sure. Alan checked his phone, seeing several missed calls from Amber. It's already working. She got the email. James shook his head. Be careful. Don't get caught in your own trap. The next day, Alan implemented the second phase of his plan. Using an anonymous account, he posted Adrian's history of domestic violence on a local community forum, naming Jane Willis and providing just enough details to make it credible without being libelous. By evening, the post had been shared dozens of times. Local gossip traveled fast in Rosewood social circles, circles Adrian desperately wanted to be part of. Alan watched the fallout through Amber's increasingly frantic social media posts. A dinner with friends canceled, a defensive post about rumors and lies, a suddenly private account. 3 days later, James called. Santiago's people made contact, he reported. Followed Adrian from his office, cornered him in a parking garage. Just a warning for now, but he's spooked. Good, Alan said. The pressure continued to build. Alan sent anonymous tips to Adrian's business associates about his gambling problems. He forwarded evidence of Adrian's abuse history to the country club, where Adrian was seeking membership. He made sure Jane Willis's story reached the charity board Adrian had been trying to join. Systematically, methodically, Alan dismantled the reputation Adrian had carefully cultivated, all from the shadows, leaving no trace back to himself. 2 weeks into his campaign, he got the call he'd been waiting for. Alan, Amber's voice was tight with stress. We need to talk. Not over the phone. Meet me at Angelo's, tonight at 8. Angelo's had been their regular date spot when they were married. A neutral location now, but public enough that Amber would feel safe. Fine. He arrived early, choosing a booth with a clear view of the door. Amber walked in 10 minutes late, as was her habit. She'd lost weight. Alan noticed. Her designer outfit hung slightly loose, and makeup couldn't fully conceal the dark circles under her eyes. You look terrible, he greeted her. She slid into the booth, ignoring the barb. I want to see Sarah. The protective order can be modified for supervised visits, she cut in. I've been pushing Family Protective Services, but they keep saying you're being difficult. Alan shrugged. Sarah doesn't want to see you. Pain flashed across Amber's face. She's 6. She doesn't get to make that decision. She's 6, and traumatized because your boyfriend smashed her head into a table, Alan corrected. And you let him. It wasn't like that. Amber protested weakly. Tell me how it was then. She looked away. It happened fast. She spilled juice on his laptop. He overreacted. Overreacted. Alan repeated flatly. That's what you call it when a grown man hurts a child. You've never liked him. You've never given him a chance. And now, I never will. Alan leaned forward. Has he hurt you too? Amber's hand moved instinctively to her wrist before she caught herself. Don't be ridiculous. Someone sent me interesting information about Adrian, she said, changing the subject. Gambling debts. A woman in Arizona. Really? Alan kept his expression neutral. Sounds like the kind of thing you should have known before moving him in with my daughter. Our daughter. Amber snapped. And I didn't know, okay? He said it was all lies from a jealous ex. And you believed him. Why wouldn't I? He's been nothing but... She stopped, reconsidering. Things have been tense lately. Since Sarah. Since the accident. It wasn't an accident. Fine. Since the incident. She rubbed her temples. Someone's targeting him. Spreading rumors to his business contacts. He thinks it's you. Does he? Alan allowed himself a small smile. Is it? What would it matter if it was? Amber studied him. You've changed, Alan. You're harder than you used to be. No, he corrected her. I'm exactly who I've always been. You just never paid attention. A server approached, and Amber ordered a glass of white wine. Alan asked for water. When they were alone again, Amber leaned forward. I need money. Alan barked out a laugh. You left me for a guy with a Rolex and a BMW, and now you need money. That's rich. Actually, it's not. For Sarah's future, she insisted. I just need some help right now. Things are complicated with Adrian. Let me guess. The gambling debts are real, and now he's coming to you to cover them. She didn't answer, which was answer enough. How much? Alan asked. 20,000. Alan whistled. Steep price for a man who's nothing but good to you. Will you help me or not? Amber demanded. Not. Her wine arrived, and she took a large swallow. You never could forgive, could you? Always so rigid, so black and white. Some things don't deserve forgiveness. Alan said, his voice dropping dangerously low. Hurting a child isn't a mistake. It's a choice, and choices have consequences. Is that a threat? An observation. He stood, dropping money on the table for her wine. Stay or go, Amber. But don't expect me to bail either of you out. As he walked away, she called after him. He's getting worse, Alan. When he drinks, he's getting worse. Alan paused, not turning around. Then you'd better start making better choices. He left her sitting there, a hollowed-out version of the woman he'd once loved. Whatever happened next, he knew he'd pushed the first domino. Now he just had to wait for them all to fall. Later that night, after checking on Sarah, Alan called James. Amber's desperate, he reported, trying to get money to pay off Adrian's debts. They're feeling the pressure, James confirmed. My source says Adrian's drinking heavily, causing scenes. Last night, he got thrown out of Meridian Club for starting a fight. Perfect, Alan said. Time to turn up the heat. Send Santiago the information on when Adrian meets his bookie. Let's see how he handles a direct confrontation. 3 days later, Alan's phone rang just after midnight. Amber's name flashed on the screen. Ellen, her voice was thick with tears and fear. I need help. What happened? Adrian found out about the emails I got. He thinks I'm the one who told people about Jane. A sob broke through. He hurt me. Bad. Where are you? At River Hospital. They're keeping me overnight. Broken wrist, fractured ribs. Another sob. Alan, I didn't know he could be like this. I swear I didn't know when I let him around Sarah. Alan closed his eyes, forcing down the impulse to say, I told you so. What do you need, Amber? A place to stay when they release me. I can't go back to the house. He has keys. I'll get you a hotel room, Alan offered. Somewhere safe. Thank you, she whispered. After they hung up, Alan sat in the darkness of his living room. Everything was proceeding exactly as he planned. Adrian, cornered and desperate, had lashed out at the closest target. Now Amber was finally seeing the monster for what he was. But Alan felt no satisfaction, only a grim determination to see it through to the end. Because despite everything, Amber was still Sarah's mother. And Adrian was still out there, dangerous and unpredictable. The most volatile part of the plan was yet to come. Alan arranged for Amber to stay at a mid-range hotel on the outskirts of Rosewood, paying for a week in advance. He visited her the day after she was discharged, bringing groceries and basic necessities. Her face was bruised, her left arm in a cast. She looked like a shadow of herself. The police came to take a statement, she told him, sitting gingerly on the edge of the hotel bed. I told them everything. Good, Alan said, unpacking the groceries into the small refrigerator. Did they say if they're going to arrest him? They're looking for him. Apparently, he cleared out his bank accounts yesterday morning. He's running. Looks that way. Amber watched him stock the small pantry with canned soup and crackers. Why are you helping me? After everything. I'm not doing it for you. Then why? Because despite everything, you're Sarah's mother. And because no one deserves what he did to you. Tears welled in Amber's eyes. I made such a mess of everything, Alan. Our marriage, my relationship with Sarah. All of it. Yes, you have. He wasn't going to sugarcoat it. Do you think Sarah will ever forgive me? Kids are resilient. More forgiving than adults. He closed the pantry door. But it will take time. And actions, not words. I want to see her. Not yet. When you're stronger. When she's ready. We'll do supervised visits, like Family Protective Services suggested. Amber nodded, accepting this boundary. Thank you for the groceries. I'll check on you in a few days. Call if you need anything. He headed for the door. Alan, she called after him. Be careful. Adrian, he blames you too. He thinks you're behind everything that's happened. Let him, Alan replied. Back in his truck, Alan called Detective Gray, who'd been assigned to Sarah's case. And now Amber's. West, Gray answered. I was about to call you. Any sign of Harlow? Not yet. We got an APB out, but he seems to have gone aground. Gray paused. Your ex-wife's statement was illuminating. Sounds like Harlow has a history of this behavior. You don't sound surprised. Let's just say my instincts were right about him. Look, I wanted to let you know we're taking this seriously now. The DA is preparing charges for the assault on your ex and the incident with your daughter. Too little, too late, Alan said. Maybe, but it's something. Gray's voice lowered. Between us, I feel better if you and your daughter stayed somewhere else for a few days. Harlow made some threats, according to your ex. We'll be fine, Alan assured him. But thanks for the heads up. That evening, Alan received a text from a number he didn't recognize. 10 p.m. The warehouse. Come alone. James confirmed what Alan already suspected. Ramon Santiago wanted another meeting. After arranging for Sarah to stay overnight with his neighbor, Alan drove to an abandoned warehouse on the industrial side of Rosewood. 2 of Santiago's men searched him thoroughly before escorting him inside, where Santiago waited. Mr. West, Santiago greeted him. Thank you for coming. You didn't leave me much choice. On the contrary, there are always choices. Santiago gestured to a chair. Please, sit. Alan remained standing. What do you want? To inform you of a development. My men located Mr. Harlow last night at a motel near Clearwater. They had a discussion about his outstanding debts, and he mentioned your name several times. He seems to believe you are responsible for his recent misfortunes. Is that right? Alan allowed himself no emotion. Santiago smiled thinly. He also mentioned your daughter in a way I found concerning. A cold knot formed in Alan's stomach. What did he say? That you care about nothing except the child. That taking her would be the only way to truly hurt you. Santiago straightened his already perfect cuffs. I have children of my own, Mr. West. Grown now. But I remember what it is to be a father. To be willing to do anything to protect them. Why are you telling me this? Professional courtesy. Mr. Harlow's debts to me are substantial, but not worth involving an innocent child. Santiago handed Alan a slip of paper. This is where he's staying, room 114. What you do with this information is, of course, entirely your decision. Alan pocketed the paper. Thank you. I have not seen you, Santiago said. You have not seen me. We have never spoken. Understood. Understood. Outside, Alan sat in his truck, staring at the motel address. His phone vibrated with a text from Amber. Adrian called. Threatening me. Says he knows I told people about Arizona. I'm scared. A second text followed. He asked where Sarah goes to school. Alan started the engine. Things were escalating faster than he'd anticipated. He called James. Harlow's at a motel near Clearwater, he said, and he's thinking about going after Sarah. I'll meet you in 30, James replied without hesitation. We'll take my car. As they drove to Clearwater, Alan filled James in on the conversation with Santiago and the text from Amber. You've got him cornered, James observed. Like you wanted. Yeah. Alan stared out at the dark highway. But cornered animals are the most dangerous. What's the plan? Reconnaissance first. We see if he's alone, assess the situation. Then we make sure he's not a threat to Sarah, by any means necessary. By any means necessary, James asked quietly. Alan met his friend's eyes. By any means necessary. They'd reached the motel just after midnight, a seedy place just off the highway, the kind that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. They parked across the street and watched room 114 for an hour, lights on, a shadow moving occasionally across the drawn curtains. He's alone, James confirmed after a quiet reconnaissance of the parking lot. One car registered to him. No visitors. Good. Alan checked his phone. No new messages from Amber or the neighbor watching Sarah. Let's go. They approached the room from opposite sides. Alan knocked on the door. Who is it? Adrian's voice called from inside, slurred with alcohol. Management. Noise complaint. Bullshit. I'm not making any noise. James moved into position beside the door, out of sight from the peephole. Sir, I need to speak with you, or I'll have to call the police. A string of curses, then the sound of the security chain being removed. The door opened a crack, and James kicked it in, sending Adrian stumbling backward into the room. Alan followed, closing the door behind them. The motel room was a disaster, empty bottles littering every surface, clothes strewn about, fast food containers piled in the corner. Adrian himself looked even worse, unshaven, bloodshot eyes, a bruise darkening one side of his face. West, he slurred, recognition and hatred filling his eyes. Should have known you'd find me. You called Amber, Alan said. Asked about Sarah's school. So, Adrian backed up until he hit the dresser, his hand inching toward the drawer. James moved faster than Adrian's alcohol-dulled reflexes could track, grabbing his wrist and twisting it behind his back. Looking for this, with his free hand, he pulled a revolver from his waistband, taken from the dresser earlier. You broke into my room, Adrian spat. That's illegal. So is threatening a 6-year-old. Alan replied calmly. So is putting my ex-wife in the hospital. Amber got what was coming to her, Adrian snarled. Stupid fool thought she could hide things from me. I see you've been busy, Harlow, Alan said. Gambling debts, assaulting women, running from Raymond Santiago, and now threatening my daughter. Fear flickered across Adrian's face at the mention of Santiago. I don't know what you're talking about. No. Alan stepped closer. Let me refresh your memory. You told Santiago's men that taking Sarah would be the way to hurt me. I was drunk, Adrian whimpered. I didn't mean. You meant it. Alan cut him off. Just like you meant to hurt Sarah when you slammed her head into a table. Just like you meant to hurt Amber when you broke her wrist. What do you want? Adrian asked, desperation edging into his voice. Money. I don't have any. Santiago's men took everything. I don't want your money, Alan said. I want your promise that you'll never come near my family again. Adrian laughed, an ugly sound. Your family. Amber left you, remember? She chose me. And look how well that turned out for her. What are you gonna do? Adrian challenged. Kill me. You don't have the guts. Alan smiled coldly. You misunderstand the situation. I'm not here to kill you. I'm here to make sure you understand what happens if you ever threaten my daughter again. He nodded to James, who released Adrian's arm, but stayed close. You've lost everything already. Your reputation, your girlfriend, your money. The police are looking for you. Santiago's men are looking for you. The only reason you're still breathing is because I haven't decided you're a serious threat to Sarah. Is that supposed to scare me? Adrian sneered, but his bravado was cracking. It should, James said quietly, because next time, we won't just talk. Get out of Rosewood, Alan advised. Far away. Change your name. Start over somewhere. Forget Amber. Forget you ever knew Sarah existed. Or what? Adrian demanded. Alan moved so quickly that Adrian didn't have time to react. He grabbed him by the throat and slammed him against the wall, leaning in close. Or I will end you, he promised, his voice barely above a whisper. Not quickly, not cleanly. I'll dismantle your life piece by piece until there's nothing left. And then, when you have nothing left to lose, when you're begging for it to be over, then I'll finish it. The smell of urine filled the air as a dark stain spread across the front of Adrian's pants. Alan released him, and he slid down the wall, shaking. We understand each other. Adrian nodded frantically. Good. Alan stepped back, wiping his hand on a towel. One more thing. Call Amber. Tell her you're done. Tell her you never want to see her again. Now? Adrian asked, voice trembling. Now. James handed Adrian his phone. With shaking fingers, he pulled up Amber's number and put it on speaker. She answered on the third ring. Adrian, where are you? Listen, he said, eyes fixed on Alan. I'm done with you, with everything. I never want to see you again. What? Adrian, what's happening? Where are you? It doesn't matter. We're finished. Don't try to find me. Is someone there with you? Adrian, are you? He ended the call and dropped the phone like it burned him. There. Happy now. Ecstatic, Alan said flatly. He turned to leave, then paused. One last thing. He pulled out his own phone, opened the camera app, and took a photo of Adrian huddled against the wall, pants soiled, fear etched across his face. Insurance. If you ever come back, if you ever contact Amber or ask about Sarah again, this goes to everyone you know. Your business associates, your country club friends, everyone. You can't. I already have. Alan cut him off. Just like I sent Amber proof of your gambling. Just like I made sure everyone knew about Jane Willis. Understanding dawned on Adrian's face. It was you. All of it. You set me up. No. Alan corrected him. I just made sure you faced consequences for once in your miserable life. He pocketed his phone. Remember our deal. Disappear, or next time. There won't be any warnings. Outside in the car, James glanced at him. Think he got the message. He got it, Alan said. But I don't trust him to stay away for long. Men like that can't help themselves. What's our next move? We wait, Alan said. Let him stew. Let him run. And we keep a close eye on Sarah. What Alan didn't say was that part of him hoped Adrian would break their deal. Part of him wanted an excuse to finish this, permanently. The next day, Amber called in a panic. Adrian, empty our joint account, she said, voice tight with anger and fear. Everything. $50,000, gone. When? This morning, right when the bank opened. She made a sound between a laugh and a sob. I was going to move the money today. I was too late. Did you call the police? They said since both our names are on the account, it's not technically theft, just a civil matter. The bitterness in her voice was palpable. "I have nothing left, Alan. The house is mortgaged to the hilt. The car is leased in his name. He took my jewelry. What are you going to do?" A long pause. "I don't know. Find a job, I guess. I haven't worked since before Sarah was born." Alan felt no sympathy for her financial situation. She'd made her choices, chosen money over morals. But he couldn't deny the part he played in bringing things to this point. "The hotel's paid up for another 5 days," he said. "That'll give you time to figure something out." "Thank you," she whispered. That night, James called with news. "Harlow's on the move," he reported. "My contact at the airport says he booked a one-way ticket to Mexico. Leaves tomorrow morning." "He's running," Alan said. "Good. There's more," James added. "Word is Santiago's not happy about Adrian skipping town without paying his debts. Not our problem." "Maybe not," James agreed. "But if Santiago's men catch up with him," Alan considered, "would save us the trouble of dealing with him if he ever comes back." "My thoughts exactly." 2 days later, Amber texted, "Got a job interview. Small publishing company needs an assistant. Fingers crossed." Alan didn't respond. He was focused on Sarah, on helping her recover from the trauma she'd experienced. The nightmares were becoming less frequent, but she still flinched at sudden movements, still grew quiet whenever Amber was mentioned. A week passed. Then no word from or about Adrian. Amber started her new job, moved into a small apartment, began supervised visits with Sarah under the watchful eye of a caseworker. Alan started to believe it might truly be over. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, as he worked in his shop, his phone rang. Detective Gray's name flashed on the screen. "West," Gray said when Alan answered. "We need to talk, in person. It's about Harlow." "What about him?" "Not over the phone. Can you come to the station?" "I'll be there in 30. At the police station, Gray led him to a small interview room. The detective looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes. "We found Harlow," Gray said without preamble. "Where?" "Mexico. Cancun, specifically." Gray pushed a file folder across the table. "He's dead." Alan opened the folder to find crime scene photos. Adrian's body on a hotel room floor, multiple gunshot wounds to the chest and head. The images didn't disturb him as much as they probably should have. What happened? Local police say it was a robbery gone wrong. But, Gray sighed. "It was professional. 3 shots, close range. Nothing taken except his phone and laptop. No witnesses, no evidence. Sounds like he crossed the wrong people," Alan observed. "Sounds like it." Gray agreed, studying Alan's face. "The timing is interesting, right after he cleaned out his accounts and fled the country. Coincidence? I don't believe in coincidences, Gray." Gray leaned forward. "I know who Ramon Santiago is. I know about Harlow's gambling debts. Am I a suspect?" "Should you be?" Alan met the detective's gaze squarely. "I was in Rosewood when Harlow was killed. Ask my employees, my neighbors. Check my credit card statements. I haven't left the state." "I already did," Gray admitted. "You're in the clear, officially." "Then why am I here?" Gray closed the folder. "Because I want to understand what happened, off the record. Sounds like a man with debts fled the country, and his creditors found him. That simple, huh?" "Sometimes it is." Gray studied him for a long moment. "Harlow hurt your daughter. Then he hurt your ex-wife. Now he's dead. Convenient. Justice often is." "Is that what this is? Justice?" Alan stood. "Are we done here, detective? I need to pick up Sarah from school." Gray sighed. "We're done, for now." As Alan reached the door, Gray called after him. "One more thing. Your ex-wife hasn't been notified yet. Official channels, and all that. I thought you might want to tell her." Alan nodded. "I will." That evening, after Sarah was in bed, Alan drove to Amber's new apartment. It was small but clean, in a modest complex on the south side of the city. She seemed surprised to see him. Alan, is Sarah okay? Sarah's fine. Can I come in? She stepped back, allowing him into the sparsely furnished living room. What is it? Adrian's dead, he said bluntly. Found in a hotel room in Cancun, multiple gunshot wounds. Amber sank onto the couch, her face draining of color. Dead? How, when? 2 days ago. Police think it was a robbery. But what? It was probably related to his gambling debts. She covered her face with her hands. Oh God. Ellen waited, giving her time to process the news. After a long moment, she looked up, her eyes red but dry. I don't know what to feel, she admitted. After what he did to Sarah, to me. But I loved him once. I know. Did you? She couldn't finish the question. No, Alan said truthfully. I didn't kill him or arrange his death. But I can't say I'm sorry it happened. She nodded slowly. Neither can I. What does that make me? Human. They sat in silence for a while, the weight of everything that had happened settling between them. What happens now? Amber finally asked. Now we help her heal, Alan said. Together, if you're willing to put in the work. I am, Amber promised. Whatever it takes. Ellen nodded, believing her for the first time in years. Then that's where we start. The official story made the local news. Kidnapping ends in shootout. Suspect killed. The police report, influenced by Detective Gray's surprising discretion, stated that Adrian Harlow and his accomplices had turned on each other during the ransom exchange. Alan West, decorated Marine veteran and devoted father, had heroically rescued his daughter from the crossfire. It was a convenient narrative that allowed everyone to move forward without uncomfortable questions. 2 weeks after the motel showdown, Alan sat across from Deputy District Attorney Monroe in her office, listening as she explained why no charges would be filed. The evidence clearly supports self-defense, she concluded, closing the file. Harlow's fingerprints on the weapon, gunshot residue on his hands, your statements corroborated by the physical evidence. It's open and shut. What about the other men? Ellen asked, maintaining the fiction that he'd been alone. Career criminals with outstanding warrants in multiple states, Monroe explained. The kind of muscle that Harlow would hire. Their families haven't even claimed the bodies. So it's over. Legally, yes. She studied him with shrewd eyes. Detective Gray speaks highly of you, Mr. West. Says you're a good father caught in a terrible situation. Gray's a good cop, Alan said neutrally. He is, which is why I trust his judgment when he says this case should be closed. She stood, extending her hand. Take care of your daughter, Mr. West. I imagine she has a long road of healing ahead. I will, Alan promised. Outside the courthouse, James waited in his car. Alan slid into the passenger seat, exhaling slowly. No charges, he reported. Good. James nodded. Now what? Now we move on. Try to rebuild some kind of normal life. James started the engine. You think that's possible, after everything? It has to be, Alan said firmly. For Sarah's sake. They drove in silence for a while, the midday traffic crawling around them. Heard anything about Santiago? Alan finally asked. Word is he's satisfied with how things played out, James reported. Adrian's death sent a message to others who might think about running out on their debts. As far as he's concerned, the matter is closed. And Mia Harlow transferred to a hospital in Houston. Apparently, she'd been planning to leave Rosewood for a while. Adrian's death just accelerated her timeline. Ellen nodded, checking off mental boxes. All loose ends tied up. All threats neutralized. What about you? He asked. Any blowback from helping me? James shrugged. Nothing I can't handle. The Marines taught us to look out for our own. I don't regret a thing. I owed you. No, James said firmly. You don't. What you did, what we did, it was justice. The kind the system can't, or won't, deliver. At Alan's shop, business was picking up again after the weeks he'd taken off to focus on Sarah. Carlos had kept things running smoothly, proving himself worthy of the raise Alan had given him. "Boss." Carlos greeted him as he walked in. "Mrs. Ramos called about her Cadillac. Says it's making a noise again. Tell her to bring it in tomorrow," Alan directed, rolling up his sleeves. "What are you working on?" "Transmission rebuild on the Anderson Camaro," Carlos reported. "Almost done." "I'll finish up," Alan decided, needing the simple mechanical work to clear his head. "Take your lunch." Alone in the familiar space, surrounded by tools, and the comforting smell of oil and metal, Alan allowed himself to really breathe for the first time in weeks. The constant vigilance, the razor edge of adrenaline that had carried him through Sarah's kidnapping and its aftermath, slowly began to ebb. His phone buzzed with a text from Amber. "Sarah had a good session with Dr. Martin today. She's opening up more." Sarah had been seeing a child psychologist specializing in trauma 3 times a week. Dr. Martin had gently warned them that healing would take time, that there would be setbacks along with progress. "Good to hear," Alan texted back. "See you at pickup." The custody arrangement they'd worked out was simple. Sarah lived primarily with Alan, with Amber having dinner visits twice a week and supervised weekend days. It wasn't perfect, but it was stable, which was what Sarah needed most. Alan finished the transmission work and closed up shop early to pick up Sarah from her therapy session. As he drove, his mind drifted back to the motel, to those final moments with Adrian. Despite everything, he didn't regret his actions. What haunted him wasn't Adrian's death, but how close he'd come to losing Sarah. Dr. Martin's office was in a converted Victorian house with a welcoming front porch. Sarah sat in the waiting room, drawing intently in a sketchbook, while Amber spoke quietly with the receptionist. "Daddy." Sarah's face lit up when she saw him, the shadows that had haunted her eyes slowly receding as the weeks passed. "Hey, princess." He knelt to accept her hug, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Good session." She nodded. "Dr. Martin says I'm being very brave." "You are." He agreed, standing to acknowledge Amber with a nod. "Ready to go. Can we get ice cream?" Sarah asked hopefully. After dinner, Amber interjected before Alan could answer. "We don't want to spoil your appetite." Alan bit back a retort. This was their new reality, co-parenting with the woman who had betrayed him. For Sarah's sake. "Mom's right," he agreed, surprising himself. "But maybe we can pick up ingredients for Sundays after dinner." Sarah's eyes widened, with hot fudge and sprinkles. "The works," Alan promised. "Yes." They walked to the parking lot. Amber fell into step beside him. "The school called today. They want to discuss Sarah returning next week." Alan tensed. Since the kidnapping, Sarah had been homeschooled, the familiar environment of their house deemed more conducive to her recovery. "Is she ready?" "Dr. Martin thinks so," Amber said. "A gradual reintroduction, half days at first, with a counselor checking in regularly." "And what do you think?" Alan asked, genuinely curious about her opinion. Amber looked surprised at being consulted. "I think she needs normalcy. Friends, structure. But I'm worried too." Alan nodded, watching Sarah skip ahead to his truck. "Let's discuss it tonight, after she's in bed." "I'll bring dessert," Amber offered. It was a strange detente they'd reached. Not friendship, not forgiveness, but a pragmatic alliance for Sarah's benefit. Some days, it was enough. That evening, after ice cream sundaes and a Disney movie, Alan tucked Sarah into bed. She clutched the stuffed rabbit James had given her after the kidnapping, a constant companion during her recovery. "Daddy," her voice was small in the dim room. "Yes, baby." "Is the bad man really gone forever?" Alan sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. "He can never hurt you again." "Promise." "I promise." He smoothed her hair, careful of the still visible scar at her temple. "No one will ever hurt you again. I won't let them." She studied his face with solemn eyes. "You saved me. I will always save you," he vowed. "Always." Satisfied, She snuggled deeper under her covers. "Night, Daddy." "Good night, Princess. Sweet dreams." Downstairs, Amber waited in the kitchen, a bakery box on the counter. She'd changed into more casual clothes, jeans and a simple blouse, looking more like the woman he'd married than the polished socialite she'd become with Adrian. "She asleep?" Amber asked, opening the box to reveal chocolate cupcakes, Alan's favorite, once upon a time. "Almost." He accepted the offered cupcake with a nod of thanks. "Let's talk about school." They discussed logistics for nearly an hour, transportation arrangements, emergency contacts, whether to keep Sarah in the same class or request a transfer. Through it all, Alan maintained a professional detachment that belied the complicated emotions beneath. "There's something else," Amber said when they'd finalized the school plan. "The insurance company finally processed Adrian's policy," she explained, hesitating. "He had life insurance, a substantial policy. He listed me as the beneficiary." Alan raised an eyebrow. "He had life insurance. A big one. I was thinking, I don't want it. Not after what he did. But if I don't take it, the money just goes to no one." She twisted a napkin in her hands. "I was thinking of putting it in a trust for Sarah, for her education or therapy. Whatever she needs." Alan considered this. It was perhaps the most unselfish thing Amber had suggested in years. "That sounds reasonable." Relief flooded Amber's face. "I'll have my lawyer draw up the paperwork. You'll be co-trustee, of course." It was another olive branch in their new arrangement, Amber acknowledging that Alan would always be part of Sarah's life, that decisions would be made together. As Amber gathered her purse to leave, she paused at the door. "Do you think she'll ever be okay?" "Really okay?" "Yes," Alan said without hesitation. "She's stronger than either of us realize." Amber nodded, blinking back unexpected tears. "Good night, Alan." After she left, Alan checked the locks, a ritual he performed obsessively since the kidnapping, and poured himself a whiskey. The house settled around him, quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of Sarah's breathing over the baby monitor he'd reinstalled in her room. His phone rang. "James. Everything okay?" James asked without preamble. "Getting there," Alan replied. "Sarah might go back to school next week." "That's good. Kid needs normal." "Yeah." Alan took a sip of whiskey. "Any word on our other situation?" "That's why I'm calling," James said, his voice dropping. "I heard something interesting about Amber's former acquaintance, Ramon Santiago." Alan straightened. "What about him?" "Word is he's been asking questions about her, specifically about the money Adrian took." A cold weight settled in Alan's stomach. The gambling debts. Exactly. Apparently Adrian made some boasts before he died about coming into money. Santiago thinks Amber might know where it is. "She doesn't," Alan said. "Adrian cleared out their joint account before he ran. Santiago might not believe that, or might not care." James's voice was grim. "Just thought you should know. Might want to give her a heads up." "I will. Thanks, James." After hanging up, Alan stared into his whiskey, contemplating this new complication. Despite everything, he couldn't let Amber face Santiago's men alone, not when Sarah needed both parents. The showdown at the motel hadn't been the end, after all, just another battle in a war that refused to stay won. Alan drained his glass and reached for his phone. Some mornings couldn't wait until morning. 3 days after James's warning, Amber bustled around her small apartment, preparing for a job interview. The publishing assistant position was working out well, but she'd spotted an opening for a marketing coordinator that offered better pay and benefits. Sarah's return to school was going smoothly, with only minor anxiety that lessened each day. Things were looking up. Her phone chimed with a text from Alan. "Lunch after your interview. Need to talk." They'd been meeting weekly to discuss Sarah's progress, maintaining their careful co-parenting dance. "Sure," she replied. "Cafe Azula. 1. See you there." Amber checked her reflection one last time. The bruises from Adrian's final attack had faded completely, and she cut her hair into a practical bob that suited this new chapter of her life. She barely recognized the woman who had once clung to Adrian Harlow, desperate for security and status. The interview went well. The hiring manager impressed by her portfolio of event planning from her charity work. By the time she reached Cafe Azula, Amber felt cautiously optimistic about her future for the first time in months. Alan was already seated at an outdoor table, sunglasses hiding his eyes. He stood when he saw her, a reflexive courtesy that had survived their bitter divorce. "How was the interview?" he asked once she was seated. "Good, I think. They'll let me know by Friday." She studied his face. "What's going on? You look worried." "James heard something," he said, dropping his voice, "about Ramon Santiago." Amber froze, her water glass halfway to her lips. "Adrian's bookie, among other things," Alan confirmed. "He's been asking questions about you, about the money Adrian took." "But I don't have it," she protested. "He cleaned out our joint account before he died. Santiago might think you're hiding it." Alan leaned forward. "Has anyone approached you? Anyone unusual hanging around?" Amber thought back over the past few days. "There was a car I didn't recognize parked across from my apartment yesterday. Black sit-in. Might be nothing." "Probably not nothing," Alan said grimly. "How much did Adrian owe him?" "I don't know exactly. He mentioned 50,000 once when he was drunk." "The same amount he took from your account," Alan noted, "and the amount he demanded for Sarah's ransom." Amber's eyes widened with realization. "You think he was planning to pay Santiago with the ransom money? It fits. Double-cross us, pay his debt, disappear with the balance." Alan shook his head in disgust. "Classic Adrian. What do we do? Should I go to the police? And tell them what? That your dead boyfriend's loan shark might be after you for money you don't have?" Alan scoffed. "Gray might listen, but what can he do? Put a patrol car outside your apartment? For how long?" Amber swallowed hard. "Then what?" "You need to leave town for a while," Alan decided. "Just until this blows over." "Leave? But my job. Sarah's visits. Sarah's safety comes first." Alan cut her off. "If Santiago's men can't find you, they might try to use her as leverage." The blood drained from Amber's face. "Like Adrian did." "Exactly. Where would I go?" "I have a fishing cabin in East Bayfield," Alan offered. "Isolated, off the grid. No one knows about it except James." Amber raised an eyebrow. "You're offering to let me stay at your cabin?" "For Sarah's sake," he clarified. "And temporarily." She nodded, accepting the boundary. "When should I leave?" "Tonight. Pack light. Essentials only. Tell your boss it's a family emergency." Alan slid a key across the table. "James will drive you. Less chance of being followed. And Sarah, I'll explain that you had to go away for work for a little while. She'll understand." Amber took the key, their fingers brushing briefly. "Thank you, Alan. I know you didn't have to do this. I'm not doing it for you," he reminded her. "I know." She managed a small smile. "But I'm grateful anyway." That evening, as Amber threw necessities into a duffel bag, her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Mrs. Harlow," a man's voice asked. "Ms. West," she corrected automatically. "I never took his name." "My apologies, Ms. West. My name is David Reynolds. I represent Mr. Ramon Santiago." Amber's heart hammered against her ribs. "I have nothing to say to Mr. Santiago." "Perhaps not," the man said smoothly, "but I believe you want to hear what he has to say to you, regarding the debt left by the late Mr. Harlow." "I don't have Adrian's money," Amber said firmly. "He cleaned out our joint account before he died. Mr. Santiago is aware of that transaction. However, the debt remains, $50,000, plus interest." "That's not my responsibility," Amber protested. "Mr. Santiago disagrees, As Mr. Harlow's domestic partner, you inherited both his assets and his liabilities. That's not how the law works. Mr. Santiago operates under a different legal framework, Ms. West. The man's voice remained pleasant, which somehow made it more terrifying. He's willing to offer reasonable payment terms, or alternatives, if necessary. What alternatives? Amber asked, though she dreaded the answer. Your ex-husband owns a profitable business. Perhaps he might be persuaded to assist you. Leave Alan out of this, Amber snapped. That's entirely up to you, Reynolds replied. Mr. Santiago will be in touch to discuss arrangements. In the meantime, I suggest you reconsider your position. Good evening, Ms. West. The line went dead. Amber stared at her phone, trembling. She immediately called Alan, but it went to voicemail. Next, she tried James, who answered on the second ring. I'm already on my way, he told her. ETA, 10 minutes. Be ready. They called me. Amber blurted. Santiago's people. They want the money. James cursed. Did they threaten you? Not directly, but they mentioned Alan's business. Amber resumed packing with renewed urgency. I told him to leave him out of it. Noble, James commented, but not how this works. Grab your stuff and get downstairs. Don't turn on any lights when you leave. Okay. Amber zipped her bag. James, how dangerous is Santiago, really? A brief pause. Let's just say you're right to be scared. See you in 10. Amber followed James's instructions to the letter, waiting in the darkened stairwell until his car pulled up. He emerged cautiously, scanning the street before motioning her forward. Stay low, he directed as she slid into the passenger seat. And don't look back. As they pulled away, Amber couldn't resist a glance in the side mirror. A black sedan, identical to the one she'd noticed earlier, was parked half a block down, its occupants watching with cold intensity. They're following us, she whispered. I know. James's face was grim in the dashboard light. We expected that. What do? We follow the plan. He made a sudden turn, then another, navigating the rosewood streets with practiced ease. Alan's waiting at the rendezvous point. Rendezvous point. Amber echoed. This was starting to feel like a spy movie. James's mouth quirked in a humorless smile. Trust me, it's not nearly as glamorous. He led their pursuers on a calculated chase through downtown, eventually pulling into an underground parking garage beneath a high-rise office building. He drove to the lowest level, where Alan waited beside his truck. Switch vehicles, James instructed. Fast. Amber grabbed her bag and darted to Alan's truck. As she climbed in, she noticed the hunting rifle mounted in the rear window. Is that necessary? She asked as Alan started the engine. Better to have it and not need it, he replied. James approached the driver's side. I'll keep them busy for about 20 minutes. Should give you enough time to clear the city. Be careful, Alan warned. Always am. James tapped the roof twice and stepped back. Go. Alan navigated a different exit from the garage, emerging onto a side street just as the black sedan screeched into the main entrance behind them. Will James be okay? Amber asked, watching the rearview mirror anxiously. James can handle himself, Alan assured her. This isn't his first rodeo. They drove in tense silence for nearly an hour, Alan constantly checking mirrors and taking unexpected turns to ensure they weren't followed. Only when they hit the interstate heading east did he relax slightly. Thank you, Amber said quietly, for helping me. Alan kept his eyes on the road. I told you, I'm not doing it for you. I know. For Sarah. She stared out the window at the darkening landscape. Still, you could have left me to deal with this alone. No one would have blamed you. Sarah would have, he said simply, if something happened to you. The cabin was exactly as Amber had imagined, rustic, isolated, nestled among pine trees at the end of a rutted dirt road in East Bayfield. No cell service, no internet, no neighbors for miles. The perfect hiding place. "It's not much," Alan said as he carried her bag inside. "But it's secure." The interior was spare but comfortable. A main room with a kitchenette and fireplace. A small bedroom. A basic bathroom. Fishing gear and outdoor equipment lined the walls. It smelled of pine and wood smoke. "It's perfect," Amber assured him. "How long do I need to stay?" "Until Santiago gives up or we find another solution." Alan checked the cupboards, which were stocked with non-perishable food. "James will bring fresh supplies once a week. I've left a satellite phone for emergencies only." He showed her how to operate the generator, the water pump, the propane stove. "There's a shotgun in the closet. Loaded. Do you remember how to use one?" Amber nodded. Her father had taught her to shoot before she'd learned to drive. It was one of many skills she'd abandoned when she'd remade herself into the woman Adrian wanted. "I remember." Alan studied her for a moment, as if seeing traces of the girl he once married. "Good. How's Sarah taking my work trip?" Amber asked. "She's okay. Disappointed about missing your weekend visit, but she understands." He hesitated. "Actually, she made you this." He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. A crayon drawing of a stick-figure girl with a yellow sun and a rainbow. At the bottom, in Sarah's careful printing, "Love you, Mommy. Come home soon." Unexpected tears filled Amber's eyes. "Thank you for bringing this." Ellen nodded awkwardly. "I should go. It's a long drive back." Will you tell her I love her too?" "Of course." At the door, he paused. "Amber, whatever happens with Santiago, this isn't your fault. Adrian's the one who created this mess. It was the closest thing to absolution she'd received from him since their divorce." "Thank you for saying that." After Alan left, Amber explored the cabin more thoroughly. It was clearly his sanctuary. Fishing photographs on the walls, dog-eared paperbacks on the shelves, a tackle box meticulously organized. She found herself wondering how often he came here, if he ever brought Sarah, if this place represented the peace he couldn't find in Rosewood. She made a simple dinner from the canned goods in the cupboard and settled onto the worn couch with one of Alan's books. The silence was profound, broken only by night sounds through the open windows. Crickets, the distant hoot of an owl, the rustle of wind in the pines. For the first time since Adrian's violence had shattered her illusions, Amber felt truly safe. 2 days later, James arrived with fresh groceries and news. Santiago's men tried to approach Alan at the shop, he reported as he unloaded supplies. Politely. "For now." "What did Alan say?" "That he hadn't seen you, and wouldn't help them if he had." James smirked. "Not exactly diplomatic, but effective. They'll come after him harder," Amber worried. "We're prepared for that." James's tone suggested she shouldn't ask for details. "Alan can take care of himself. And Sarah, safe. She's staying with Alan's neighbor, a retired cop, very security conscious. During work hours, Alan never lets her out of his sight otherwise." Amber nodded, relieved. "Any word on how long this might last?" "Hard to say. Santiago's patient, but not infinitely so. Eventually, he'll decide the debt isn't worth the effort." Amber studied James's face. "Unless you actually do know where Adrian hid the money." "I don't." Amber insisted. "He took everything we had in that account." James studied her, then nodded, apparently satisfied. "All right. Alan sent this for you." He handed her a burner phone. Prepaid, untraceable. He programmed his number for emergencies. The gesture spoke volumes about Alan's evolving trust. "Tell him, thank you." After James left, Amber paced the small cabin, restless with forced inaction. She'd spent the past 2 days cleaning, organizing, reading, anything to keep her mind off the mess Adrian had left behind. The real estate agent had called right before she'd fled, informing her that the house was officially in foreclosure, another financial disaster, courtesy of Adrian Harlow. On impulse, she called Alan on the burner phone. "Everything okay?" He answered immediately, concern evident in his voice. "Fine. she assured him. I wanted to check on Sarah. She's good. Back to full days at school now. The nightmares are less frequent. That's wonderful. Amber sank onto the couch. James mentioned Santiago's men approached you. A pause. It's handled. Ellen, I'm so sorry about all this. If I could go back and undo every decision that led us here. You can't. He cut her off, not unkindly. None of us can. I know. She stared out the window at the darkening forest. I just want you to know that I understand now. Everything you tried to tell me about Adrian, about priorities, about what really matters. I was blind, and stupid, and selfish. Why are you telling me this? Because I need you to know that I've changed, that I understand what I threw away. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Not that it matters now. The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken history. It matters to Sarah. Alan finally said, That's enough. After they hung up, Amber moved to the small bedroom, suddenly exhausted by emotions she'd been suppressing for weeks. She'd lost everything she'd once valued, only to discover those things had never really mattered. The pretense was gone. The mask she'd worn had slipped away, leaving only the raw truth of who she was and what she'd done. Perhaps this was her karma, living with the consequences of her choices, stripped of everything except the opportunity to rebuild herself into someone worthy of her daughter's love. She fell asleep thinking of Sarah's drawing, the simple declaration of love that meant more than all the luxury she once chased. 5 days into her exile, Amber awoke to the sound of a vehicle approaching. Not James's truck. This engine was smoother, quieter. She grabbed the shotgun from the closet and positioned herself by the window, heart hammering. A sleek black SUV pulled up in front of the cabin. 2 men in dark suits emerged, scanning the area with professional vigilance. Then a third man stepped out, older, silver-haired, immaculately dressed despite the rustic surroundings. Raymond Santiago had found her. Amber's first instinct was to call Alan, but she hesitated. Bringing him here would only put him in danger too. This was her mess, and perhaps finally her opportunity to fix it herself. She placed the shotgun within reach, but out of sight, and stepped onto the porch as Santiago approached. Ms. West, he greeted her, as if they were meeting at a charity luncheon rather than a remote cabin. I apologize for the intrusion. How did you find me? She asked, trying to keep the tremor from her voice. I have resources, he said simply. May we speak inside? Amber considered refusing but realized the futility. If Santiago wanted to harm her, he would, regardless of where they talked. Fine, she agreed, leading him into the cabin. His men remained outside, watchful. Santiago declined her awkward offer of coffee, instead surveying the rustic interior with mild interest. Your ex-husband's property, I presume. Yes. A resourceful man, Mr. West. Santiago sat at the small kitchen table, unbuttoning his suit jacket with practiced ease. I admire that quality. What do you want? Amber asked bluntly. The same thing I've always wanted. The money owed to me by Adrian Harlow. Santiago's smile didn't reach his eyes. $50,000, plus $15,000 in accumulated interest and inconvenience fees. I don't have it, Amber said firmly. Adrian took everything before he died. So I've been told, repeatedly. Santiago straightened his already perfect cuffs. Yet I find myself unconvinced. Adrian Harlow was many things, but he wasn't intelligent enough to hide money effectively. Check my bank records, Amber challenged. I'm practically broke. I had to take an entry-level job just to make rent on a 1-bedroom apartment. Perhaps the money isn't in a traditional bank account, Santiago suggested. Perhaps it's in a safe deposit box, or converted to cryptocurrency, or simply hidden somewhere only you know about. It's not, Amber insisted. Adrian and I hadn't been close for months before he died. He wasn't sharing secrets with me. Santiago studied her face, searching for deception. You know, Ms. West, I've been in this business for 30 years. I've developed a sense for when people are lying to me. He leaned forward slightly. You're not lying, but you're not telling me everything, either. Amber swallowed hard. What do you mean? I think you have a theory about where the money might be, something you've considered but dismissed, something that might help me recover what's owed to me. The intensity of his gaze made Amber shift uncomfortably, because he was right. There was something she hadn't shared with anyone, not even Alan. There was a storage unit, she admitted reluctantly, in Adrian's name. I found a key and paperwork in his desk after he hurt me, before he kidnapped Sarah. Santiago's expression sharpened with interest. Did you look inside? I was in the hospital, and then everything happened with Sarah. And then he was dead. She shrugged helplessly. I forgot about it. Until now. Where is this storage unit? North side of Rosewood, off Preston Road. Santiago pulled out his phone, made a brief call in Spanish, then returned his attention to Amber. My associates will investigate. In the meantime, you'll remain here. Am I a prisoner? Amber asked, glancing toward the shotgun hidden beside the couch. Consider yourself a person of interest. Santiago rose smoothly. I'll return once the storage unit has been examined. After he left, Amber paced the cabin frantically, debating whether to call Alan. If the money was in that storage unit, Santiago would have what he wanted and leave them all alone. If not, she didn't want to think about the alternatives. Her decision was made for her when, 3 hours later, Santiago's SUV returned. This time, he entered alone, carrying a small duffel bag. It seems you were right, Ms. West, he announced, placing the bag on the table. Your late boyfriend was indeed hiding assets from you. He unzipped the bag to reveal stacks of cash. More than Amber had ever seen outside of movies. How much is there? She asked, staring at the money. Approximately $80,000, Santiago replied. More than enough to cover his debt. Relief washed over Amber. Then we're done. You'll leave my family alone. Your family. Santiago raised an eyebrow. Interesting choice of words for a divorced woman. Amber lifted her chin. Alan is Sarah's father. That makes him family, whether we're married or not. Indeed. Santiago rezipped the bag. Yes, Ms. West. Our business is concluded. You're free to return to Rosewood whenever you wish. As he turned to leave, a thought struck Amber. Wait, there's more than $65,000 there. The extra money. Consider it compensation for your inconvenience, Santiago interrupted smoothly. A small gesture of goodwill. I don't understand. Santiago paused at the door. Let's just say I respect Mr. West's dedication to protecting what's his. It's a quality I share. He inclined his head slightly. Goodbye, Ms. West. I trust our paths won't cross again. After Santiago's departure, Amber sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Then she called Alan. It's over, she told him when he answered. Santiago found the money. We're in the clear. What money? Alan asked, confusion evident in his voice. Where? A storage unit Adrian had. Santiago's men found cash inside. $80,000. Jesus. Alan breathed. And he's satisfied. He's gonna leave us alone. That's what he said. Amber laughed, a slightly hysterical sound, born of relief. He even let me keep the extra money. As compensation. That's unexpected. Alan sounded suspicious. I know, I don't understand it either. Amber pushed her hair back from her face. But it's over, Alan. Really over. I'll send James to bring you back tomorrow, Alan decided, just to be safe. Thank you for everything. The next day, as James drove her back to Rosewood, Amber gazed out the window at the passing landscape, marveling at how much her life had changed in such a short time. She'd lost almost everything she'd once valued, only to discover those things had never really mattered. James, she said as they neared the city, why would Santiago just walk away like that? Even leave me the extra money? James kept his eyes on the road. Men like Santiago operate by a code. It's not our code, not the law's code, but it's consistent. Once the debt was paid, the matter was closed. But the extra money? James hesitated. Let's just say Alan and Santiago developed a mutual respect during the situation. In certain circles, that's valuable currency. Alan did something for him, didn't he? That's why Santiago was so accommodating. You'd have to ask Alan about that. But Amber knew she wouldn't. Some questions were better left unasked. Some debts better left unacknowledged. As they pulled up outside her apartment building, James handed her a small paper bag. Your new phone and cards are inside. Alan took care of it. New phone. Burner phones aren't secure long-term, James explained. Better to start fresh. Another act of protection. Another line drawn between before and after. Amber accepted the bag with a nod of thanks. James, she called as he started to drive away. Tell Ellen, I won't waste this second chance. James studied her for a moment, then nodded. I think he already knows. Amber carried her bag upstairs, unlocked her apartment door, and stepped into the quiet space. It wasn't much. Simple furnishings, bare walls. None of the luxury she'd once insisted she needed. But it was hers, freed from Adrian's influence, free from Santiago's threats, and a new beginning. She opened the paper bag James had given her, finding not only a new phone, but an envelope containing $15,000 in cash. A note in Alan's handwriting read simply, for Sarah's future. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was something equally valuable. Acknowledgement that she was still Sarah's mother, still capable of doing right by their daughter. Amber placed the money in the back of her closet, behind her small collection of shoes that no longer included designer labels. Tomorrow, she would open a separate account, start building that future fund. But tonight, she simply wanted to revel in the freedom of having survived. Not just Adrian's abuse or Santiago's threats, but the consequences of her own terrible choices. She had a chance to rebuild, to become someone Sarah could be proud of. Someone she could be proud of. The irony wasn't lost on her that Adrian, who had taken so much from her, had inadvertently given her the one thing money couldn't buy: perspective. 6 months later, Alan stood in his backyard, tending to steaks on the grill while Sarah and her friends splashed in the above-ground pool he'd installed for her birthday. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the freshly mowed lawn, the air filled with the sounds of children's laughter and the sizzle of cooking meat. Need a hand? James asked, emerging from the house with 2 cold beers. Ellen accepted one with a nod of thanks. Just about done here. How many kids showed up? 6, including Sarah. James grinned. They've completely destroyed your living room with wrapping paper and cake frosting. Worth it, Alan said, watching Sarah dive underwater, completely at ease. The transformation over the past 6 months had been remarkable. The nightmares had all but disappeared. The flinching at sudden movements had stopped. She'd made new friends at school, excelled in her classes, even joined a junior swim team. She's doing great, James observed, following Alan's gaze. Yes, she is. Pride swelled in Alan's chest. Tougher than I gave her credit for. Just like her old man. James raised his beer in salute. The back gate opened, and Amber entered, carrying a brightly wrapped package. She'd changed in the past months too. Confidence in her stride. A return of the independent spirit that had first attracted Alan years ago. Her job at the publishing company had turned into a full-time marketing position. She'd moved to a slightly larger apartment, small steps toward rebuilding her life. Sorry I'm late, she called, approaching the grill. Meeting ran over. You're just in time for food, Ellen assured her. Sarah's been watching the gate for the last hour. On cue, Sarah spotted her mother and launched herself out of the pool, wrapping a towel around her dripping body as she ran over. You came. Of course I came, sweetheart. I wouldn't miss your birthday. Amber hugged her, heedless of the water soaking into her blouse. I brought you something special. "Can I open it now?" Sarah asked, eyeing the package eagerly. After dinner, Alan interjected, lifting the steaks onto a platter. "Go tell your friends to dry off and wash up." As Sarah darted away to corral her friends, Amber turned to Alan. "This is quite the party you've put together." "She deserves it," Alan said simply. "Yes, she does." Amber's smile was genuine, without the artifice that had characterized the later years of their marriage. "Need help with anything?" "James is handling drinks. Carlos's wife brought 3 different salads. I think we're covered." The easy domesticity of the moment struck both of them simultaneously. How natural it felt to orbit each other in the shared task of parenting, despite everything that had transpired between them. "I'll go help the kids get dried off," Amber offered, breaking the moment before it became awkward. Dinner was cheerfully chaotic. 6 excited 7-year-olds and a handful of adults crowded around picnic tables in the backyard. Alan found himself watching Amber interact with Sarah's friends, her natural warmth drawing them in as she told animated stories that had them giggling between bites. "She's different," James commented quietly, following Alan's gaze. "Yeah," Alan agreed. "She is. Second chances are rare in this life, brother." Alan shot him a warning look. "Don't start." James held up his hands in surrender. "Just an observation." After dinner came cake, chocolate with strawberry filling, Sarah's favorite, and presents. Alan had splurged on a new bicycle with purple streamers. James gave her a child-sized fishing rod for their upcoming trip to the cabin. Carlos and his wife had found a chemistry set for beginners. Then came Amber's gift. Sarah unwrapped it carefully, revealing a leather-bound book. "A diary," she guessed, examining it. "Not exactly," Amber explained. "It's a memory book. See, I'd started it with photos and stories from when you were little. There are pictures of you as a baby, your first steps, your first day of preschool, and lots of blank pages for new memories we'll make together." Sarah leafed through the book, entranced by glimpses of her earlier childhood. "There's Daddy, when he had more hair." The adults laughed as Alan pretended to be offended. "I thought we could add today's party," Amber continued, "and maybe you could bring it on our trip next weekend." Alan and Amber had finally reached a point where overnight visits were deemed appropriate by both Sarah's therapist and the family court. Amber had planned a weekend at a nearby state park, with hiking and canoeing, activities that reflected her new priorities. "Yes." Sarah hugged the book to her chest. "Can we put in pictures from when we go fishing with Daddy, too?" "Of course," Amber agreed, her eyes meeting Alan's briefly. "It's your book. All your special memories belong in it." As the party wound down and parents arrived to collect their children, Alan found himself alone with Amber in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher while she wrapped leftover cake. "The memory book was a good idea," he acknowledged. "She loves it. I wanted her to know that even though things are different now, she's always been loved," Amber said, closing the container with a snap, "that some things haven't changed, even when everything else has. She knows," Alan assured her. "She's secure in that." Amber nodded, relieved. "I was thinking, for her next birthday, maybe we could do something together. Co-host, I mean, if that wouldn't be too weird." The suggestion would have been unthinkable a year ago. Now it seemed like a logical evolution of their carefully reconstructed relationship. "We could do that," Alan agreed. "For Sarah." "For Sarah," Amber echoed with a small smile. "Always the best reason." Later, after everyone had left and Sarah was asleep, surrounded by her new presents, Alan sat on the back porch with a beer, enjoying the rare moment of quiet. His phone buzzed with a text from Detective Gray. "Still on for poker Thursday." Their unlikely friendship had developed gradually over the months following Adrian's death. Gray had never directly asked what really happened at the motel, and Alan had never volunteered the information. Some truths were better left unspoken between men who understood the gray areas of justice. "I'll bring the cigars," Alan texted back. His thoughts drifted to the changes the past year had brought. The shop was thriving, with a new commercial contract that had allowed him to hire 2 more mechanics. Sarah was flourishing, her resilience a daily source of pride. Even his relationship with Amber had evolved into something neither of them could have predicted. Not friendship exactly, but a partnership based on mutual respect and shared priorities. The monsters had been vanquished. The storms had been weathered. Peace had finally found them. Alan finished his beer and went inside to check on Sarah one more time before bed. She slept soundly, her face relaxed, one arm curled around the stuffed rabbit that had been her constant companion through the darkness. He brushed a strand of hair from her forehead, careful of the faint scar that remained at her temple, a permanent reminder of how quickly everything could change, how vigilant he must always be. "Sleep tight, princess," he whispered. "You're safe now." Sarah stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open for just a moment. "Daddy," she murmured sleepily. "We're safe now." "Always," Alan promised, kissing her forehead gently. Sarah drifted back to sleep, secure in her father's promise, a promise Alan intended to keep for the rest of his life. No matter what it took, no matter who stood in his way. Some men deserved no mercy, but this child deserved everything. Every sacrifice, every protection, every chance at happiness Alan could provide. As he closed her door, leaving it cracked just the way she liked, Alan felt the weight of the past year settle into something lighter, something manageable. Not forgotten, never forgotten, but no longer consuming. They had survived. They had rebuilt. They would continue forward, stronger for having been broken, wiser for having suffered. And if darkness ever threatened them again, Alan would be ready. No mercy for those who threatened what was his, no forgiveness for those who brought harm to his door. But for now, in the quiet of his home, with his daughter sleeping peacefully under his roof, there was only this: peace, hard-won and fiercely guarded.